Let's go.
Let's go.
Oh, do you want to?
Sorry. I'll let you.
Next one.
I'm excited and I feel relaxed and I'm ready to party. Don't say sorry. You don't need to do that. You don't need to apologize. It's a fucked up female habit. You don't need to be sorry for anything ever. Can you guess what every woman's worst nightmare is? I don't have rage issues! I have nothing to prove to you. When I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
I say when it comes to stardom and Lauren, there are no accidents.
Hi, Karen Peterson.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this late night edition of Citizen Tame.
People are going to be like, I'm listening to this at the same time I always do.
But we're recording it at 8:15 Eastern Standard Time. So it is a late night edition for someone who is about to turn 39. I am Lauren Humphries Brooks. And with me, as always, is Karen Peterson. Hello, Karen.
Oh, I remember being 39. Barely.
I'm not 39 yet. I'm 38 still until the end of this month.
I remember being almost 39.
How are you doing this evening, I guess, Karen?
I'm doing all right. Yeah. I'm doing all right. It's a Wednesday. It's like that middle of the week, but it's a weird week because it was a short week because we had Labor Day.
Oh, yeah.
So it's Wednesday, but it's also Tuesday. But really, it's Wednesday, I think. I don't know.
See, I talked with my dad yesterday, and he was like, "What day is it?" I was like, "I think it's Tuesday," but I literally did not remember. I was like, "It's probably Friday, actually." It's been a week.
Your parents need one of those clocks that's just the days of the week.
They do. They're retired and all sorts of things, but yeah, that's what my dad was saying. He was like when you retire because you don't have a schedule anymore, not the same way. I was like, yeah, I get that, but yeah. I also didn't remember what day of the week it was. So
it's so hard to keep track these days. Who knows? It
really is. So we're recording unusually on a Wednesday evening because Karen is, I don't know, going on a rager this weekend. So she couldn't record on the weekend.
For some reason, one of my friends, one of my very good friends, got the bright idea to get married. I don't know what he's thinking. Yeah. Like, what are you doing, man?
Crazy.
Anyway, no, I'm very happy for him. He picked a good one. I love his bride. She's great. So I'm very, very happy for them, but it threw off my entire weekend.
That's sweet though. That's nice. Yeah. That's nice. It's good that people are getting married.
I guess.
If they love each other and they want to be, and that's what they want with one another, I think that's lovely.
Yeah. No, they're great.
So we're going to talk about Suspicion. Speaking of marriage,
of people getting married.
So I do think that this is my birthday month, and it wasn't really planned this way, but we actually decided to talk for my birthday month about one of my favorite sort of classical Hollywood stars, Cary Grant. And Cary Grant has been, I had such a crush on him when I was an adolescent. And I actually think that it was Hitchcock that got me into Cary Grant, interestingly enough. I saw Notorious and I was like, oh, I like him. And then went back and watched a whole bunch of his films.
I was trying to think what my first Cary Grant movie was. I think it actually was An Affair to Remember, which we will also be talking about later this month. And the reason I saw An Affair to Remember was because of Sleepless in Seattle, a movie that I loved that very much references An Affair to Remember a lot. And I finally was like, I just need to watch this movie. And then I fell in love with Cary Grant.
And he is so lovable in that movie too. I'm looking forward to talking about that one as well. That I actually showed that movie. I remember at a sleepover when I was like 13 or something like that.
And your friends were like, "Where's Scream?"
They loved it. No, they loved it. They were
good.
all of my friends were like crying by the end of this movie. A bunch of adolescent girls just sobbing by the end of An Affair to Remember.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was one of my favorite movies. And at that point,
it's a great movie.
It is a great movie, so looking forward to talking about that. But so Cary Grant, major crush of mine, and wonderfully enough, we are going from Alfred Hitchcock to Cary Grant. So of course we had to start with the first film that Grant made with Hitchcock, which was Suspicion from 1941. And this is the first time that they worked together. They would later do Notorious, To Catch a Thief, and of course, North by Northwest, which we discussed at the beginning of our Hitchcock month. So wonderful, just sort of fluid, seamless flow on this one. At this point, he was a major movie star by this point. So this is 1941. He'd already done films like The Philadelphia Story, His Girl Friday, Bringing Up Baby. She'd done him wrong. He had actually quite a long career, beginning really in the 1930s and going through into the 40s. And so at this point, he was very well established, and the screen persona that he had for himself was very well established. He was viewed as this. He was a screwball comedy star. He was a romantic leading man, and he was Cary Grant. He was charming, tall. He was kind of the epitome of tall, dark, and handsome. Very charming, very likable. Just one of those screen presences that you watch him whenever he comes on the screen. And if you watch any of his really early films, so even before something like Bringing Up Baby, if you go back and look at Blonde Venus, was it Hot Saturday, some of those, like the films he did with Mae West, he's very charismatic, even before he's really this major established star. So you understand how he became such a big name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now his birth name was Archibald Leach. I don't know how far he would have gotten if he had really made his effort as Archie Leach. I don't know. I went recently to see a movie called Relay, which is still, I think you can still find it in theaters right now. It's a new movie with Riz Ahmed and Lily James and Sam Worthington. And there's I don't want to get into all the details of the movie, but it's sort of a like thriller cat and mouse kind of movie. And there's a part where Riz Ahmed is he's sending something through the mail, a package, and he addresses it to Archie Leach. And when I saw this, I started laughing, and I realized nobody else, and the theater was pretty full. I realized nobody else reacted to that, and I was like, I don't think anybody here knows who that is. Well, that's what's kind of sad about that, but also like, it's fine.
Yeah, not surprising, I think, at this point. Although I'm always amazed that people don't know a lot of things about Cary Grant, but of course he's Cary Grant. Like, what do you mean you don't know anything about him? But I mean, of course, he even made a joke about Archie Leach in His Girl Friday. He talks about the last man who said that to me was Archie Leach. We cut his throat. and so you get those moments, but like Grant himself famously talked, kind of flippantly, but also I think it's very indicative, talked about, everybody wants to be Cary Grant. Even I want to be Cary Grant. Yeah. So he had this attitude that was very much that this was a screen persona. This was an invented persona that, as a lot of stars had in those days, particularly the really big movie stars. So not the character actors, but the big stars. And the studios contributed to this. They invented whole relationships for people. The degree to which the studio system and the studios controlled their actors and controlled the images of their actors, including, as we've talked about in the past, morality clauses and contracts, kind of behavior that the stars were allowed to engage in. And it differed sometimes depending upon what role you played on screen. So there was a lot more flexibility for someone like Errol Flynn, who was kind of known for being this rogue, right? Versus someone like Cary Grant, who was like, he was the good guy. He was the hero. He was the romantic leading man, the screwball comedy star. And it did a number on a lot of these people, honestly. Yeah. And some of the more famous ones, people like Judy Garland or Mickey Rooney, who were really controlled from the time they were children. But Grant himself, like, very much, sort of represented himself as this other persona, this image who was Cary Grant. And so in talking about suspicion, I think it's really important to consider Grant's star persona at the time because of the role that he is playing and because of what Hitchcock manages to do with his characterization, but also fails to do. And particularly when we get to talking about the ending, I think that that's where it becomes really important. So like Hitchcock uses Grant in all of the films that he worked with him on in a really interesting way, and particularly in Suspicion and in Notorious, kind of begins to poke holes, puncture that image of this very well put together, very charming, very likable figure, and begins to sort of peel back some of the layers and show a lot of darkness underneath. And I think that we certainly get that in Suspicion. So before we really get into it, Karen, like, what are your general thoughts about Suspicion? Like, when did you first see it? What are your feelings towards it?
Apparently, according to Letterboxd, the first time I saw it was in 2020, which it could be true. There were a lot of early Hitchcock films that I hadn't seen until just the last few years, but I don't remember what my initial thoughts were from watching it the first time. Because I don't know if you remember, but a lot has happened since then. And this would have been like January of 2020. So, but I was watching it again last night in preparation for this episode. And I think it's really interesting to look at this film not long after we just did an episode about Gaslight.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this comes out a couple of years before Gaslight, but you really see some similarities in tactics in the men in both of those movies. And one of the things that really caught me off guard with Suspicion was it was surprisingly triggering for me. Because I have indirectly experienced a relationship like this where just some of the things that Cary Grant's character does and says, and just the withholding of truth, I guess, the gambling addiction, and then things like her chairs disappearing and her just having to just pretend to be okay with that, those kinds of things. I'm like, oh, I have actually been through this with someone close to me, and I just thought, man, it's crazy how, and this is something that I've said many, many times over the years of this podcast, that people don't change. And so it's always interesting to me when I see a movie from this time period, or even from earlier, that really captures experiences from people that are still happening, and like behaviors that still go on. Human psychology is the same. It's like, it doesn't really change. And so I don't remember really like feeling that way the first time I watched it. So so when we were like, yeah, let's talk Suspicion, I'm like, cool, yay, Hitchcock and Grant together, that's fine. And then I was watching it last night going, I don't like how I feel. This is very uncomfortable. And I had forgotten so many of the important points of it. Still a great movie. And I think there are some things that I don't love about it, but I think it's really, as you were saying, I think it's really great use of the Cary Grant persona, because it's so easy to see why somebody would be charmed by him, and it's so easy to see where he could get away with so many things, and also we, even as the audience, even knowing what we think we know about him, still want to believe that he's not that bad. It's a very interesting experience.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the first half of the film, so we get introduced to Johnny, played by Cary Grant, and Lena, played by Joan Fontaine, who meet kind of randomly on a train and are attracted to each other. Like, he's hungover, and also doesn't have enough money for a first class ticket. And she gives him like a stamp and a couple of pence to cover his first class ticket. And so he is this really interesting figure, I think, because he's very charming, very likable, and he has that edge of like badness, right? That is very attractive, particularly in someone who is so well put together, so charming, and so likable as Cary Grant, right? He's very much playing that role. Like he's funny, he's frivolous, he, you know, sometimes shows up, sometimes doesn't. And all of that is very, very attractive. So you understand in watching it, like why Lena would be attracted to him in the first place. And then why she would want to continue to pursue him, because we also get some insights into her home life, that she's fairly cloistered, she's sort of bookish. She hasn't really had relationships. You know, her parents talk about her like, oh, she's intelligent and capable, so she's going to die an old maid, and that's fine. Right. And so she has this longing for someone like Johnny, who is so dashing and charming, and also that badness, that like that frivolity, that the fact that he isn't responsible. He in fact like doesn't have, he has money, but he doesn't have money. He keeps spending it. He keeps losing it. And it's an interesting sort of story, because in some ways, Lena isn't really fooled. She kind of knows what she's getting when she marries him. And that's one of the interesting things about this film. And I think in contrast to something like Gaslight, where from the beginning in Gaslight, he's manipulating her, right? To get something that he wants. Johnny isn't really manipulating her. In fact, he's kind of being straightforward with her a number of times. And they have a conversation in the car when he first kisses her. He literally says, like, I'm honest with you because I think it's the best way to get results. Like he says that to her, and she's like, yeah, probably. Like they go into it with this sense that she knows who and what he is. Right. And that is actually what she wants, really. Like that's something that she's attracted to, even as she knows that it's probably not a good thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think the comparison that I see with this and Gaslight is really in the tactics of the men and what they do to get their way. But the two women are very, very different women. And the situations are completely different too. I don't think that is it Johnny?
In Suspicion, yeah. Johnny.
Yeah, okay. Johnny. Yeah. I don't think that he goes into this marriage. I mean, I think he goes into that marriage going like, oh yeah, cool. She's an heiress. At some point we're going to inherit. And also she already has money. So we'll just live off of what she has. It's going to be fine. I do think that he goes in with that mindset, but he's not going in with the mindset of, oh, I'm going to marry this girl and kill her and take her money.
Yeah.
That's not why he does it. I think that there is part of him that actually is drawn to her for real. I think her intention behind going into that marriage is also a little bit less than forthcoming, because I think she's obviously drawn to him. She's obviously attracted to him. She does fall in love with him. But as you say, like she overhears her parents talking about how like she's going to be a spinster. She's never going to get married. They're fine with that, but she's not. She's like listening at the window. She overhears this conversation and she's just like, no, that's not going to be me. I'm not okay with that. I don't want to just take care of my parents for my entire life.
Yeah.
And so she kind of enters into that relationship more as a way out of her current situation than out of oh, I just really love this person and I just want to be with him. She kind of goes into it with specific intentions as well.
Well, there's an element of like she's proving something.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's that whole scene where she's talking to her father, like after that, right? She's talking to her father and she's like, oh, I didn't actually go to church. I, went out driving with Johnny and he's going to come pick me up later. Like it is this rebelliousness, right? And she's a grown woman at this point, but she's kind of been put into this box. And we sort of see both the way that she's placed herself in the box and also the way that her parents have placed her in that box of like, this is what she is. Lena doesn't behave like this. There's even one point where her father says, like, when she's all dressed up for the ball, and her father says, like, oh, I barely recognized her myself. Like, she's putting an effort into that. She wants to be something different than this box that she's been placed in. And
Yes.
part of that is related to sexuality as well. Like, she kind of wants to show, like, I can get this guy that is hot and that is bad and that you don't want me to be with. Because he's bad, right? It is like it's a high class 1940s version of the bad boy, right?
Right.
He's not even from the wrong side of the tracks. He's just bad. You know, he was thrown out of a club for cheating. It may have been cards, or maybe in a woman, one or the other. But Selena definitely has that awareness of who he is when she marries him. As opposed to someone like Ingrid Bergman and Gaslight, who doesn't know who her husband actually is.
Right. Like he went into that marriage intending to defraud her and fool her. He didn't care about her at all. It was all an act from the beginning. This is not the same.
And then you get into those tactics. So kind of the glasses begin to come off a little bit when they get back from their honeymoon in Suspicion. And you know, she's sort of listening to him, and he's talking about, oh, well, we can just live off of your money. And she's like, we can't afford this. Like, he's bought this entire house, he's furnished it, etc. She's like, we can't afford this on my allowance. And he's like, well, but I mean, your father's going to leave you something, right? And she's like, no, I wouldn't depend on that. And you get this like whole development, but what we see in that scene is so good. And what you're talking about in terms of I recognize this. It's that kind of push and pull, you know. Oh, I'm talking about getting a job. Oh God, I don't want to get a job. Like, you know, she's getting more and more concerned. And then he's like, well, actually, I already have a job. I was just concealing it from you. Ha ha ha. Right. Yep. And we get that a number of times throughout the first half of the film, where he hurts her, right, in these kind of frivolous and thoughtless ways. You don't even get the sense he's not trying to hurt her. He's just not thinking of her in any way, and how she will react and how she will feel. And then he sort of comes back in with, well, I bought you all of these wonderful things. I'm giving you all of these gifts. You know, I love you so much. The whole scene with in the introduction of Beaky, played by Nigel Bruce. And, you know, he says a number of times, like, oh, he's just Johnny. This is just what Johnny does. Yep. And she's sitting there like, this is my husband, right? This is the person that I've decided to spend the rest of my life with. And he doesn't, and that's part of it. He doesn't consider her feelings at all. It's not even that he doesn't consider the money. He doesn't consider how she would feel when he sells her father's chairs, or when he goes and gambles and puts all of his money on a horse.
Right.
And that escalates throughout the first half of the film in particular.
Yeah. Well, and that's where it was just very recognizable to me, where like I can remember, for the sake of people in my life, I'm trying to avoid specifics, but because I don't think they want their business out there on the internet. But I you know, like I can remember I knew someone who was married to somebody who had a gambling addiction that she didn't know about. And you could always tell when he'd had a good day, because he would come home with gifts and he would have like just fun things and all these plans. And then when he had a bad day, there would be things like, oh, suddenly the living room furniture is gone. You know, and there'd be some story about what happened to it, you know, and so it was just like, oh yeah, I know this person, and he's so sweet and so charming, and he, you know, when he gets so excited, you want to join in on that excitement, and he's, you know, he's trying to do nice things, but he just is so, for whatever reason, whatever has happened in his life before this point, he's just so broken and misguided that he doesn't know how to behave like a like a responsible adult.
Mhm.
And part of being a responsible adult is considering your partner's feelings and considering your family finances and not just taking it upon yourself to do what you want with them.
Well, and that's something that so in the film, that's something that Lena says to him, like, you're a baby, you don't understand how this works.
Yeah.
And in a certain sense, he is. Like, he doesn't understand. He's not like he's just like, oh, I'll just borrow some money. It's like, you can't just borrow money your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
You can't furnish a house, you can't live on, and particularly in the context of the 1940s, right? You can't support a wife on just this kind of frivolity.
Right.
It's not going to work. It isn't going to work, and it's going to end up.
It will catch up with you eventually.
Yeah,
and it clearly has caught up with him more than once, but he never learns.
Yeah, and so it's an interesting film, I think, also for Hitchcock, because we get this sort of building of their relationship and Johnny's characterization, and it's kind of using all of those elements of the Grant figure, the Grant persona that we love, that sort of that breeziness, that romance, the charm, the elegance, all of it. And then it's beginning to peel back those layers and being like, what is this man actually? Like, what is underneath all of that? And it makes it, as the film goes on, he gets darker and darker and darker. Until about halfway through the film is when Lena's father dies.
Mm-hmm.
And Johnny at that point is definitely expecting her to inherit a bit.
Oh, yeah.
And she doesn't really inherit anything. She keeps her allowance, right, which is 500 pounds a year.
Mm-hmm.
And he leaves them a portrait of himself. And we get that wonderful moment where Johnny, and it's one of the few scenes that is not actually focalized through Lena. Most of the film is told through her perspective.
Yeah.
Except for this scene. And he goes into the room where the portrait is kept. It's a big portrait of her father.
Gigantic portrait of her father.
And
who wouldn't want that in their living room, honestly?
And he pours himself a drink and he says, just like, you win, basically,
mm-hmm.
right? And that's when the shift in tone happens in the film. So we've been kind of building to all of these elements of his character. And then that's when we begin to suspect him and Lena begins to suspect him, because it gets progressively darker as the film goes on.
I think it also gets a little bit, I think part of the reason it gets, what's the word I'm even looking for? Not part of the reason it gets darker, but I think part of the reason that it gets a little bit more suspicious, I guess, is because of the fact that she hasn't gotten a big inheritance from her father. And so then it becomes, well, what is he after at this point?
Yeah.
There's clearly something different. Something has changed in him, at least it seems like. And, we start learning more facts about what's currently happening in his life and a little bit more of what has happened in his past. But ultimately, the things that we suspect he might be thinking and planning, there's also that question of like, but why? To what end? What would he gain by killing her at that point?
Yeah, and that's what the film, like, it begins to move in that direction. So we get like the real estate scheme between him and Beaky, and
which Nigel Bruce is great. I love him in this role.
He's so sweet, and like I love it when he says just like, oh, put my foot in it again, did I? Like,
he's such a fanboy of Johnny, and it's like, I get it, man, I get it.
Well, yeah, you're just sort of like, yeah, he's great. Like, he's Cary Grant.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, but it's really sweet. And so then we get Beaky's death, right? But so there's one scene before we get into like the point of Beaky's death. There's one scene where Beaky is kind of explaining to her, this is how the real estate company is going to work, and it's all going to be in Johnny's name.
Oh man, as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, I know where this is going.
and yeah, exactly. And it's all it's gonna be my money, but in Johnny's name, because it's simpler that way. And she's going like, no,
Is it though?
and it's at that scene, at the end of that scene, because Johnny overhears their conversation. And at the end of that scene, that's when Johnny begins to get really sinister. And it begins to implant, I think, in the mind of the audience as well as in Lena, of what does he want, right? Like exactly what you're saying. What is he after? And there is that undercurrent of violence, that he can get nasty.
Yeah.
And the entire scene, so the way that it's shot, it's a single shot that moves from the two of them standing in the doorway. He actually blocks her from leaving the room. And again, Cary Grant, large man, like, he's 6 foot, he's broad, he can be very intimidating. And we don't usually associate Cary Grant with being intimidating, but he can be.
Right. He can be an imposing figure.
Yeah. And so he actually blocks her from leaving the room, and then he walks very close to her the entire time. And he's talking to her. He's getting angrier and angrier and saying, like, don't interfere, whatever I say goes, don't you dare to like step into this. And she's sort of trying to placate him. But the entire, like the color scheme, even, and this is black and white film, but you get the use of the bars, the dark shadowy bars that are running across her face, and across the stairway behind them. And that's something that comes up again and again in the second half of the film as this sort of web symbolism with the use of the shadows. And it develops over the course, like it's very obvious, right? But it develops over the course of the story, where it gets darker and darker and darker. And it's at this point where Johnny is being very threatening, and not really, he's not saying anything specific, but he's just like, do not interfere in my business. Don't ever do this again. And that's the point where Lena begins to get suspicious. And I think the audience really begins to go like, what is actually going to happen here? And again, speaking about Cary Grant's persona, we're also thinking of Hitchcock's persona at this point.
Yeah.
We know what kind of a director Alfred Hitchcock is. This is going to get dark at some point.
Right. What I really like about the way this is all developed is the fact that, you look at a movie much later, but you look at a movie like Charade, where there's some question, and at one point it kind of looks like, well, maybe he's clearly not who he says he is, but you still like him and you still go along because there's some other thing that's the answer to all of this that's not dark and sinister. That's not the case in Suspicion. And what I really appreciate about the way Hitchcock develops this part of the story is that you don't ever feel like, oh, there's some really nice, tidy conclusion to this that's going to exonerate him of being this bad person. You just feel more and more like, we don't actually know this guy, and he is capable of anything.
Yeah, and the fact that is all filtered through Lena, so much of this film is being told through her and through her experience. So we're experiencing her fear. We're experiencing that encroaching darkness, that web imagery.
Yeah.
In relationship to her husband. And, again, reaching back to something like Gaslight or the Don't Trust Your Husband movies that we've talked about a bit, which Suspicion is a major part, right? It is this, like, so this person that you are supposed to, the person you're supposed to trust the most. We know Johnny isn't trustworthy. She knows that Johnny isn't trustworthy. Up until this point, it's been kind of like, oh, it's just Johnny, right? But
he's just irresponsible.
Yeah, but then it's like there's something even darker underlying it, and those red flags that have been put up the entire film all the way through really begin to come home to you, and that's when her suspicions about him develop. So then we get Beaky's death, right? This is the other thing. So much of the death and the violence in this film happens off screen. Her father dies off screen. We hear about it through a telegram. Beaky dies off screen. We hear about it through a newspaper column and the reports of the detectives. So it's what Lena is being told, and then the construction that she's putting on it.
Right.
And the construction that the audience is encouraged to put on it as well, because it's all running through her. And then she begins to basically build up a case against her husband of like, you know, oh no, he wasn't in Paris, but he left his club early, and then he told me he left it later. He knew about Beaky's problem with brandy, right? He called the name of the Englishman that was accompanying him was All Bean or something like that, and Beaky always calls Johnny Old Bean. You know, all of those things that just develop more and more, and it's all circumstantial evidence, but it's also evidence.
Yeah, well, he's also kind of developed a friendship with this writer who writes mystery novels.
Yeah.
And he's like trying to get information from her. They have this dinner scene where they're talking about untraceable poisons, and he's very interested in this, you know, but then there's like the story, like, is he writing a book himself? Like, what is he trying to do? Like, is he, you know, what's going on here?
Well, so let's talk about the mystery writer character, because she's the Agatha Christie figure, basically, right?
Yes.
She's the local celebrity. She lives in town. She lives in the same town that they do. And they're like friendly with her and everything. And we get this character who's very, very Hitchcockian. Like those are the points where you get those little elements. Like Hitchcock loves his secondary characters. He loves the weird little people that inhabit English villages and boarding houses and stuff like that. So you've got this mystery writer who, you know, just has this wall of like case histories of famous serial killers. And her brother is the coroner. He's a Scotland Yard coroner too. Like he's a pathologist.
Yeah.
So he's pretty high up. And so Lena and Johnny have this friendship with her, and then Lena begins to like, oh, Johnny's been borrowing all these books from her. Johnny really loves detective stories. He loves murder mysteries. You know, and at one point, there's a really interesting scene between Lena and the mystery writer, Isabel. And it's nearing the end of the film, but it's where she goes to her, and Lena has read Isabel's most recent book, and they begin talking about what is considered murder. You know, is this really a murder? So the story is supposedly that the murderer has like lured his victim across this bridge, knowing that the bridge has been sawn through and that the victim can't swim. So there's a high likelihood that if the victim falls through this bridge, they're going to drown, right? Is this really murder? And the Isabel says, well, from a moral perspective, yes, this is murder, right? Even though it's going to look like an accident. Because the intention is there, and it's about the intentionality. And so even at this point, and this is what I really like about this film, is that Lena's justifying Johnny. She suspects that he is going to try to kill her. She suspects that he killed Beaky.
Yeah.
And she's trying to find ways that, well, is this truly murder? Like, as though calling it by a different name is going to make it okay in some way. It's going to make it morally justifiable.
Or at least more palatable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that conversation between the two of them, because we get this insight into Lena's, like, so much of this film is about Lena's psychology, really. And the bits and pieces that she begins to put together in creating this image of her husband as this man who is not just a murderer, but going to murder her specifically.
Right. Yeah. There's even that scene where she and Johnny and Beaky, before Beaky died, they're playing that word game, like Scrabble, basically. And she's spelling out words with her letters, and she spells out murder. And it's like I feel like that's kind of one of those where before she saw it in writing in front of her face, she wasn't really necessarily going there in her brain, but then all of a sudden she's like, wait a second.
Well, and Beaky even says, like, oh, if I had an ER, I could spell murderer.
Yeah.
Well, and that's very Hitchcockian. But there is this, throughout the film, there's this evocation of Lena's psychology. What is it within Lena, first of all, that leads her to marry this man? She's on the train, she's reading a book about child psychology.
Yeah.
So it's introduced very early on. But so what is it in Lena that leads her to marry this man, then to continue to justify him, and eventually to begin to develop this narrative where he's a killer? And everything that happens, and the fun thing I think about the film is that the audience is pulled into that. We see all of the development. And then over against that, and this is where Grant's screen persona comes back in, over against that, we have the fact that this character is being played by Cary Grant. And Cary Grant is not a murderer. He's not a killer. He's not going to do something like that. So there's this tension, I think, for the audience and for Lena, of like, he is so wonderful, we like him, but also we've seen all of the things that he's done, all of the evidence against him, basically. We're building this case against him. So maybe he is the killer, right? And also we've got Alfred Hitchcock very heavily implying that he's the killer. He's going to try to murder Lena. So it's this interesting, I think, push and pull that's going on.
It is. I do want to just clarify one thing, because earlier when we were talking about once her father dies and and she's not going to inherit what he thought she was going to inherit, then it becomes the question of like, well, what's he after now? And the answer to that question is, at least for Lena, that he's going to go after her life insurance, that he's going to try to kill her so that he can get her life insurance. One of the things that I think is really interesting is that we learn toward the end of the movie that he had tried to borrow against her life insurance and was denied. And she finds a letter that specifically says you can only collect on this if you're in the case of your wife's death or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And throughout the film, there's that, it's less. So I think that it's like, what is in it for Johnny? He needs money no matter what. Like we find out that he lost his job with his cousin.
He got fired.
And why he did that, he like stole this money, that he can't pay it back, that he's in debt, he's got a gambling problem, all of these things. He needs money, period. That is what he needs. And so we see through him finding all of these different, how can I get money? And what begins to develop is like, well, the only way he can get money is to kill her.
And or for her to accidentally die on a cliffside.
Is it a murder? Right. Exactly. Is it really a murder? He just lets her fall.
Right.
And through the Beaky incident, we think like, okay, he might be capable of actually committing murder. And there's that dialogue that goes on too, that the dinner party scene where they're having this conversation, like who is able to commit murder, who is, emotionally, mentally capable of committing murder. And Isabel basically says like, oh no, like Johnny's not capable of it. And meanwhile, we will learn from Hitchcock, thanks to Patricia Highsmith later, that anybody is capable of murder. But yeah, it kind of gives I think that, Hitchcock is kind of Hitchcock really likes this whole concept of the chaos world and the meaninglessness of monstrosity sometimes. That human monstrosity can come out in ways that feels illogical, right? So you can't pack that into the simple moral tale of some people are capable of committing murder and some people aren't. Right. Which, and you've got this character who's very much this representative of Agatha Christie, of the very sort of well-structured, well-balanced moral universe of the mystery novel, where we get to indulge in the fun of murder and of mystery, but everything comes out all right in the end. And there are some people who can do it and some people who can't. And Hitchcock is very much like, there's this monster inside of us, right? There's this monster that lives among us, basically, that can commit murder. So at the end of that, I think we get the most famous scene in this film, which is the glass of milk scene. Oh my gosh, that is absolutely terrifying. And it's great. I will say it's great the first time you see it, because I remember watching this film when I was like, I was a teenager. I was an adolescent. It was my Hitchcock phase, first Hitchcock phase.
I was going to say phase. I think this is a lifestyle at this point.
Well, this is when I first got into Hitchcock, right? I
Okay.
remember watching this movie, and that scene in particular just freaking me out so much. The whole passage, the shadows, the passage of Cary Grant like across the floor. It is this moment where I don't think anyone before or since made Cary Grant as sinister as he is in that like single sequence.
Oh yeah. I don't know if you could get away with doing that a second time, honestly.
Yeah, and it's so, and everything has been so built up. It's a shot that, it's interesting because the audience sees it. Lena can't see it, right? But we are still in kind of her mindset of who Johnny is and what he is capable of. And we've heard about this like this poison that is undetectable and
untraceable,
and that is in every household, right?
Yeah.
And it's a great setup because you're like, okay, so he has immediate access to this, he knows about it, and he brings her up this glass of milk. Famously, Hitchcock actually did put a light bulb in the glass of milk. It's like lit from below in order to light it up.
Yeah, very effective.
And it is, it's like this glowing like little goblet basically that is being carried across and up the stairs and into the bedroom.
And it kind of makes it feel like it's poisoned or toxic,
Yeah, it's the poisoned apple almost.
Exactly.
Like, it's too bright. It's too much like milk.
Yes.
It's not normal. There's something wrong with it. And so I think that this is a good place to then talk about the ending. Because we get all of this build up, we get the glass of milk on Lena's side table, and of course the question for the audience is she going to drink it, and is it poisoned?
Right.
And we get one part of that answered. She doesn't drink it at all, so we don't know if it's poisoned or not.
We will never know.
And so to talk about the ending of this movie, it's a fairly famous ending. In the novel, the whole essence of the novel is supposedly, this is based on things that Hitchcock said. The whole essence of the novel is that this is a story about a woman who realizes her husband is a murderer and decides that she loves him so much she would rather die. Like she will let him kill her, basically. And
wow.
that's how the story ends.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's the ending of the novel.
Interesting.
In the film, the ending that Hitchcock says he wanted, this is his claim. And this is, I'm going to look it up to be certain. Let's see. So what Hitchcock said was, I was not too pleased with the way Suspicion ends. The scene I wanted, but it was never shot, was for Cary Grant to bring her a glass of milk that's been poisoned. And Joan Fontaine has just finished a letter to her mother. Dear mother, I'm desperately in love with him, but I don't want to live because he's a killer. Though I'd rather die, I think society should be protected from him. Then Cary Grant comes in with the fatal glass, and she says, will you mail this letter to mother for me? She drinks the milk and dies. Fade out and fade in on one short shot. Cary Grant, whistling cheerfully, walks over to the mailbox and pops the letter in.
So she's basically sacrificing herself so that...
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So that's the ending that Hitchcock claims he wanted. The ending of the novel is that she lets herself be murdered. Now, there's some dispute about this. Donald Spoto, who I always take with a massive grain of salt, claims in, I think it's The Dark Side of Genius, that the ending of the film had been planned very, very early on, and that this was something that Hitchcock was fine with. So there's some conflict about this, but one of the things that comes up again and again is that RKO, according to Hitchcock, said Cary Grant can't be a murderer.
Which I can see where they would be concerned about that.
Yeah, and in fact, Hitchcock says in his discussions with Truffaut that one of the RKO producers actually recut the film completely because it implied too heavily that Cary Grant was the murderer.
Interesting.
And that Hitchcock basically got back and was like, this is shit. How you can't do this to my movie. And the studio actually allowed him to recut the film in its original form.
Hmm.
But so you've got this interesting conflict between this image that is Cary Grant and the persona of Cary Grant. Cary Grant cannot be the killer. And you've got a story that very much is leading up to Cary Grant being the killer.
Yeah.
And having this much bleaker, much darker ending where, all of Lena's suspicions are true. What we get is an ending where sort of things get explained away in a lot of ways.
As they always do.
Well, and this, yeah, exactly. So
Mhm.
tell us, Karen, what are your thoughts about this ending?
So I love this ending because there are explanations for things. It does seem to clear him of Beaky's murder, and I'm fine with that. Like he apparently has an airtight alibi. He was in a different country. So okay, maybe that's legit, maybe it's not, we don't know. And that's what I love, is the fact that this movie is called Suspicion. It's about a woman having these suspicions, and we never find out for sure if those suspicions are true, like are correct or not. There's lots of evidence that those are correct. And I love this sense after this crazy scene on the roads, on the road and involving the cliff. And then they just like end up turning the car around and going back home. And I like that there's this ambiguous ending of this could happen again. Like this isn't necessarily over. This is not two people that are going to go live happily ever after. This is always going to be hanging over them. And maybe he didn't go through with it this time, but it doesn't mean at some point he won't.
Yeah, and I think it's a really interesting ending in a lot of ways, and it is definitely evading the fact of like making Cary Grant a murderer. And one of the
they're
things,
not making him a murderer either.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things I noticed in watching it this time was how much of the story Lena furnishes. So she says, "Oh, you were going to kill yourself." Like she begins. We've seen her crafting this narrative around him this entire film. And she begins crafting another narrative. She's like, that's what this was all. You were going to kill yourself. You were going to do this. And he kind of goes along with it. He's just like, yes, that's exactly what I was going to do.
You got it. You nailed it. That's right.
And we do know that Johnny is very good at constructing narratives. And of lying, right? And we've seen him do it a number of times, and we've seen him
so smoothly. And the fact that that's not her immediate concern, how easily he can lie, is a little bit interesting.
And that's part of it. She wants to believe. She wants to believe, just as she does from the very start. She wants to believe that it's true. In fact, at one point, Beaky even says to her, like when they're talking about, the American who came to buy the chairs, right? And Beaky even says, like, "Oh, well, show us the check. Like he gave you a check. Show us the check." Yeah. And she gets mad at Beaky. Like, how are you saying that my husband is a liar? And it's obvious Lena doesn't believe him, right? But she wants to believe him.
Yeah, and she's not going to let anybody else call him a liar.
Yeah. But there's that, like, if I force myself to believe him, then it will be true.
Yep.
And you can argue that that's what's happening at the end of the film. And so you have this really ambiguous ending. It's almost like, a mega happy ending, right? We've got the swelling music and he puts his arm around her and everything. And you're just like, I don't know. But it leaves this ambiguity.
It does. And for me watching that, I go, oh no, that guy's definitely a killer. He's just decided this isn't the time. He's going to find another opportunity where it's going to be cleaner. That's how I'm looking at that ending. But somebody else can watch it and be like, oh, and they lived happily ever after and everything was fine.
Yeah, it's actually, I go back and forth about the ending because I would have loved to see an unambiguous Cary Grant as a murderer story.
Yeah.
And I will say that according to Hitchcock, Grant wanted to play he wanted to play that role. He wanted to be allowed to do that. It was not permissible, basically, under the studio system. But at the same time, Hitchcock does kind of pull off this question mark at the end of the story. We've never really left the fantasy that Lena has constructed.
Right.
And she's constructing another fantasy. So it's a question like, is Johnny a killer? We don't know. How
Right.
is this all? Was the milk poisoned? We don't know.
Yeah. And I love that. That's the thing. I love that we like the version that you want to believe is what you can believe at the end. And any way that you look at this ending, it can be like there's justification for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And I really like that.
It's Schrodinger's ending.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do like it's funny. This film, like I go back and forth on. I don't think it's one of Hitchcock's greatest. I think that, you know, in terms of the best film that Hitchcock and Grant made together, I think that's Notorious. Where again, he plays a very morally ambiguous character. He is ostensibly the hero, but he does a lot of really questionable things in Notorious.
Yes.
And I think that Hitchcock in particular was able to draw that out of Cary Grant and to sort of look at that kind of darkness underlying the persona, and the complexity underlying it as well, in a way that a lot of other directors couldn't do or wouldn't do. And he draws out something in Cary Grant's performances that really don't exist in anything else that Grant did.
That is very true. Yeah. And well, and I think part of it is that he knows how to use that persona to leave the audience kind of unsure what to think or feel about him too.
Yeah, it's a very good manipulation of the star persona and the concept of the star, and who, you know, that the fact that, you know, there's this awareness that Grant is an image, he's not even really a person.
Right.
That there is someone called Cary Grant, but there's also someone else underneath all of that.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So any final thoughts about Suspicion?
I would just like to mention that Joan Fontaine won the Academy Award for Best Actress for Suspicion. Did you not know that?
I did not know that, no.
Oh, yeah. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, it was also nominated for Best Picture and Best Original Score.
So, yes. Yeah, so the movie was nominated for 3 Oscars. Joan Fontaine won. This was the year of, I think, How Green Was My Valley. I'm still pulling it up. So the movie lost to that one. And Joan Fontaine, this is who else was in the lineup with her. Bette Davis for The Little Foxes, Olivia de Havilland for Hold Back the Dawn, Greer Garson for Blossoms in the Dust, and Barbara Stanwyck for Ball of Fire.
I bet Joan Fontaine liked that one. Sorry.
Now,
anyone who doesn't know, Olivia de Havilland was Joan Fontaine's sister, and they had a very contentious relationship.
They did. And what's interesting is that so Joan wins this year. She had been nominated the year before for Rebecca, did not win. And that year she lost to Ginger Rogers for Kitty Foyle. Also nominated that year against Bette Davis for The Letter, Katharine Hepburn for The Philadelphia Story, and Martha Scott for Our Town. But anyway, this was her second nomination in a row, and she wins. Also second nomination for a Hitchcock movie. So I thought that was interesting. And then also the same year, so 1941, Cary Grant is also nominated for Best Actor. It's his first Best Actor nomination, but for Penny Serenade.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. He never did win. He was nominated again in 44 for None But the Lonely Heart, and then he received an honorary award in 1969. So he never won a competitive Oscar, but this was the year of his first nomination.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, yeah. So see, you can still be great even if you don't win an Academy Award, people. It's okay. Awards are fun, but they're not everything.
True. Very true. Yeah, I like Suspicion. I think it's a film that I think deserves more attention than it sometimes gets. It sort of gets ranked into the mid-tier Hitchcocks, and actually I think it has a lot more interesting things going for it.
I definitely think it's one. Yeah, I think it's one that people should talk about more. it was interesting. I mean, it's some of these movies, it's so funny when you look at kind of what the critic reviews look like for a movie, and then you look at things like Letterboxd. So on Rotten Tomatoes, the aggregate of Suspicion, and I forgot to look at how many reviews this is for, it's got a 97% from critics. But on Letterboxd, it's like a 3 point something, and a lot of people they don't love it that much, and they think it's definitely lesser Hitchcock. I saw some classic film fans, so these are not like kids these days who don't appreciate old movies, like classic film fans who just think Joan Fontaine, this is not her best work. She obviously was better in Rebecca, but yeah, like a lot of that. But I have not seen complaints about Cary Grant's performance.
No, Grant is fantastic, and he does he plays that darkness very well.
He does.
He plays that conflict, that he plays Cary Grant really well, and then sort of begins to go like, how much do you actually know about this guy?
Yeah.
How much do you actually trust him? At what point does the charm end, and what is actually going on underneath?
Mm-hmm.
So
that's all I have.
So for next week, we're going to go back in time just a little bit. We are going to chat about Bringing Up Baby from 1938. And this is one of my favorite screwball comedies, honestly. Love Bringing Up Baby. So I'm looking forward to talking about that. And that one really is one of the major stepping stones in Grant as a big star.
Yeah.
And he is so much fun in this. So looking forward to that one. And yeah, I think that is going to close us out for this week, and actually properly and totally close off our Hitchcock month, which we've managed to elongate. I'm very proud of that.
Go us.
And of course, we want to thank our wonderful and lovely patrons, who include Abby, Audra, Brian, Connor, Estefania, Ferdinanda, Heather, James, Judy, Carriata, Matt, Michelle, MK, Monty, Nanina, Noel, Robert, Roxy, Steve, and Sharon. Thank you so much for supporting us and continuing to support us. We still have our Alfred Hitchcock Presents bonus episodes. And we are going to start a new bonus series. And we're also going to have a couple of other fun bonus series. So should I mention The Conjuring?
Yes.
All right. So we have a couple of other fun bonus series, as well as a very special bonus episode about the last ever, maybe, possibly, I don't believe it completely, Conjuring movie, which is coming out.
It is about their last case, so
I don't believe it. Haven't seen it yet, but I don't believe it. So we're going to be talking about that in a little bonus episode. I'm very much looking forward to that. And I will say right now, I love pretty much every one of the Conjuring movies. So it doesn't have a lot of hoops to jump through for me. And that is, of course, on our Patreon. That's patreon.com/citizendame. And we also have our Ko-Fi. That's ko-fi.com/citizendame. You can throw us a couple of dollars if you feel like it. And we have our website. That's citizendamepod.com. And of course, you can get in touch with us a multitude of ways. Our email is citizendamepod@gmail.com. And we are on various socials. We are on Instagram and Blue Sky at Citizen Dame Pod, and a Letterboxd HQ at Citizen Dame. And of course, you can get in touch with us individually. Karen, where are you?
I am on Instagram, Letterboxd, and Blue Sky at Karen M. Peterson.
And I am on Instagram and Letterboxd at LH Business. So thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to y'all later.
Bye.
Oh, I'm just beginning to understand. You thought I was going to kiss you, didn't you?
Weren't you?
Of course not. I was merely reaching around you, trying to fix your hair.
What's wrong with my hair?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that. It would have been extremely discourteous for me to bring the subject up.
Are you serious?
Well, of course I'm serious.
I may seem provincial, but frankly, I can't understand men like you. You always give me the feeling that you're laughing at me.
No, I give you my word. But your hair's all wrong. But it has such wonderful possibilities that I got excited. For the moment, I became a passionate hairdresser.
What's wrong with it?
Let me show you. Let me see. What? Don't do that.
Why not?
Because your occipital mapillary is quite beautiful.
What's an occipital mapillary?
That.
You don't need to touch it.